The Formula One World Championship is brought to you on Eurosport by Ford, Formula One's most successful team. Hitachi. Elf Fuel, World Champion.
Hello and welcome here on Eurosport. Hello and welcome to Jerez de la Frontera for the 14th round of the FIA Formula One World Championship, the European Grand Prix at the Jerez circuit. A new Jerez circuit since 1990, the last time Formula One cars drove around this circuit. And 1990, 18.3 was the pole position time then. I don't think we're going to get close, John, because the circuit is actually a little longer now. But this morning, not only Nigel Mansell's back, you see him on your screen now, but also Michael Schumacher, and it was Michael Schumacher who was fastest.
Well, here we are, back at a circuit which hasn't seen Formula One cars racing since 1990, and back here we have Nigel Mansell for the second of his 4 Grand Prix in the 1994 season. And is all this a prelude to 1995? Well, that's one of the many questions this weekend that have not been answered, and it's certainly one that the Williams-Renault team are not inclined to give you an answer to either, nor is Nigel Mansell. But from my understanding, it is intention to see him here on a regular basis in 1995. The other man who's been making the news this weekend, Michael Schumacher, and all of you Formula One enthusiasts back in the United Kingdom and England will have opened your tabloid newspapers this morning to see an attack, a scathing attack on his rival for the 1994 World Championship, Damon Hill. And some of the comments that Michael Schumacher made earlier this week when he was having a run in his car at Estoril, I have to say, have taken my breath away. One of them is, had Ayrton Senna been racing, he'd have been driving circles around me. That shows what I think about Damon Hill as a driver. Well, that was just one of a number of comments that came from Michael Schumacher. Now, I think it's all rhetoric. I think it's all psychological warfare going on between Schumacher, certainly from Schumacher, directed towards Damon Hill. Damon has been dignified and has not responded, and that is the correct course to take.
Damon Hill ending up third fastest this morning, complaining of traffic and changing circuit conditions from lap to lap, especially at this chicane where quite a few people put some sand on the circuit, and Damon had a quick spin as well. Second fastest, Mika Häkkinen in the McLaren Peugeot, and he was 0.4 of a second slower than Michael Schumacher. Schumacher, who did a 1:23.850. Häkkinen 24.3, then Damon Hill. Fourth, Heinz Harald Frentzen, and fifth, Gerhard Berger. Sixth, Nigel Mansell. Seventh, Eddie Irvine. Eighth, Rubens Barrichello. Ninth, Jean Alesi, and in 10th position, Jos Verstappen. We've now had some 5 minutes gone in this first qualifying session. Of course, 12 laps to go for all drivers. They can use as many sets of tyres as they can get through in 1 hour. Or 12 laps for that matter. And at the moment it's Heinz Harald Frentzen who is fastest on a 1:24.184. That is quicker than Frentzen managed this morning. But John, I assume the place will pick up speed. More rubber will be put down and the place will get quicker and quicker.
Oh, absolutely. The circuit when everyone started at 9:30 was very dusty and dirty indeed. And on top of which people went off, particularly in the new chicane and through a lot of the very red dust or earth around the circuit onto the line. Of course, now, just after 1 o'clock, the circuit temperature has risen considerably since 9:30, so that offsets the advantage of the track getting cleaner. But on balance, I would expect to see everyone improve from the times they achieved this morning. And in fact, Frentzen and Irvine are two such people. Frentzen presently quickest 1:24.184, and Eddie Irvine second quickest 1:24.967.
Mansell improving to a 25.192. That's a little slower than he did this morning. and currently in third position. Second, Eddie Irvine, and quickest now, Heinz Harald Frentzen, a 1:24.184, and that's a very good performance by the German. Mansell and Barrichello third and fourth. Mansell a second behind Frentzen. Then it's Oliver Panis with a new teammate, Johnny Herbert, but we'll get to that in a minute. And Ukio Katayama is in sixth position. Now we've got 5 drivers that are either driving new cars or different cars. 6 drivers, sorry, that have done that. Of course, and there's a blow up from Ukio Katayama, putting oil and water and whatever on the line.
Absolutely. I mean, Ukio Katayama should have stayed way on the left-hand side of the track, because as he pulled over, in effect, to get onto the inside on this straight, he has laid down liberal coatings of certainly of oil and possibly of water, and that's on one of the new modified Yamaha V10 engines. They've got a butterfly throttle mechanism for the first time on the V10 engine. Now that is not the cause, and he's wandering all over the track. He's deciding, I want to get off the racing line. All he is doing is just putting more and more oil, and I'm certain water, onto the track, and particularly in the new corner, the Situ Ponds, a wonderful fourth gear corner entered. Then you rise up, crest, and it drops away, and the camera position of that corner, Allard, one of the best camera positions of any corner on any current Grand Prix circuit I've seen. And certainly from a driver's perspective, I think a wonderful corner.
So driver changes here. Of course, we've seen Nigel Mansell back in the Williams. David Coulthard is out of the car for the last 3 races. Eric Bernard has changed from Ligier to Lotus, because Johnny Herbert is now changed from Lotus to Ligier. There we see the blow up from Ukio Katayama in replay. Hideki Noda has replaced Yannick Dalmas for the last 3 races in the LaRousse Ford, and the second Simtek is being driven by Domenico Mimo Sciattarella, Italian, who's done IndyCars for the last 2 seasons, on and off IndyCars, but he's got a super license and he's here, and he was actually 26th fastest this morning, ahead of Bertrand Gachot and Paul Belmondo, right behind Hideki Noda.
And just looking down across to the pit lane, well, things have gone quiet on the circuit, because now with the oil that has been laid by Ukio Katayama, the circuit will, for about 10 minutes or so until the oil is cleared off the racing line, be a little bit slower. But the amount of media interest in the Williams pits is outstanding. It's not for Damon Hill, who's sitting in his car very quietly, but it's for Nigel Mansell, and this is Mansell's car, the red 2, but outside the pit garages. And there we see Frank Williams masterminding this operation this weekend.
So we've had 10 minutes of this session. Frentzen, Irvine, Mansell, the top 3, with plenty of time to go here in Jerez. We'll be back after the break. 49 minutes to go for the first qualifying session here in Jerez for Sunday's European Grand Prix. We've had 9 cars out on the circuit so far. Frentzen, Irvine, Mansell, Barrichello, Panis and Katayama, the top 6. Sciattarella is 7th, Bernard 8th and Gachot 9th. Gachot basically only doing 1 flying lap. Katayama is the reason, or actually the engine in Katayama's car is the reason we don't see anybody out at the moment. A lot of oil was dumped on the circuit, and I think we've got to wait until... Oh, it's a red flag out. Ah, I see. There's a red flag, so they're clearing off the oil from the circuit. They're probably going to put cementas down, and then we can continue. I don't know what's worse, John, putting cementas down or just letting cars run over it.
Well, in the past, I think the decision was just let the oil stay there. As long as everybody knows it's there, it will inevitably get wiped or rubbed off the part of the circuit where it's been put down. So I think the opinions are very divided as to whether it is better to put down something like what they call in America speedy dry, which is a form of cement. That in itself then can cause secondary problems, because as the powder as it is gets worked into the fluid, the oil or the water, particularly if it's oil, it gets rolled into minute little marbles, and that in itself becomes a hazard. But this weekend, really, everybody's focus is clearly on what is going to happen in the remaining 3 races. We've got a situation now with Michael Schumacher back for these remaining 3 Grand Prix. He is only 1 point ahead of Damon Hill. It is going to be a shootout over these 3 Grand Prix. And I have to say, the prospect of the remainder of this afternoon's qualifying session, we haven't yet seen Schumacher or Damon Hill on the circuit. What's going to happen on Saturday afternoon, and then of course on Sunday's Grand Prix itself. And undoubtedly, with the nature of the Jerez circuit, it's an aggressive circuit, it's a demanding circuit. It's also quite a long race in terms of time, 70 laps this year. But looking back at the race distance back in 1990, it was something like 1 hour and 48 minutes on a circuit that was quicker than the circuit we have now. So we're looking at a Grand Prix that's probably going to exceed 1 hour 50 and may come close to the 2 hour limit. Now that's going to say an awful lot about the stamina, principally of the drivers, but also of the cars. And mechanical reliability has been a feature of both Williams and Benetton teams this season. They've both enjoyed pretty good reliability, almost, I would say, perfect reliability. The argument is it going to end here, or are we going to see a continuation of the superb preparation that both Benetton and Williams have provided their drivers with?
Officials having a look on the scene where the oil's been put on the circuit. Well, they don't seem to be doing a lot at the moment. You could see just the oil slick there around that corner, very much on the inside. Well, this man's enjoying the sunshine of Jerez. Frentzen, top of the list at the moment. 24.184. Irvine, Mansell and Barrichello, top 4, with Oliver Panis and Ukyo Katayama 5th and 6th. Now, if we go back a couple of years, Frentzen and Irvine both racing in the Japanese Formula 3000 series. Well, Chettarella, Bernard and Gasho have been the only other cars on the circuit or that have completed laps. So Frentzen and Irvine, the guys that went to Japan and came back as Formula 1 drivers. And there's a lot of talk about Heinz Harald Frentzen. Where will he go next year? So the reason we're not seeing anything on the circuit, no cars are on the circuit, is because this happened to Ukyo Katayama's engine. A pretty major blow up.
Oh yes, I don't think you're going to get one worse than that. And of course, you see as he goes round the Sito Pons corner, he just lays lots and lots of oil and water right on the racing line. The worst thing that could have done, and that's the reason now we're in a red flag situation. Clerk of the course out on the circuit having a look and checking just how much oil is down on that part of the corner. Should they leave it, let it evaporate itself or get brushed off onto the grass at the side of the track? We're not really sure what the decision is going to be, but we're talking about Heinz Harald Frentzen. What is he going to be doing next year? Well, one thing is clear, and that was in one of the papers again this morning, a confirmation that Mercedes-Benz are to part company with the Sauber team at the end of the season. So that means that Sauber will not enjoy the Mercedes-Benz V10 engine in 1995. The question then is, where is it going to go? Well, pit lane rumour clearly is directing the engine towards the Marlboro McLaren team. But everybody then says, well, they've got a Peugeot engine deal. What's going to happen to the agreement between the Marlboro McLaren team and Peugeot? All those questions have not been answered, but the speculation clearly indicates that Mercedes-Benz will be the engine supplier to the Marlboro McLaren team in 1995 and thereon. And could it be that Heinz Harald Frentzen is a part of that package? That's one of the very strong rumours also currently being spoken about here in the paddock in Jerez.
Front brakes of Michele Alboretto's Minardi Ford. Actually, a nice little car there, John, with some extra wings, I think we see.
Yeah, little canard fins just sticking out from the side. Unless those are new camera positions that we haven't seen. Have we got a list of camera positions that are currently available here in Jerez this weekend? Well, Michele Alboretto, he made some comments. No, those are fins, in fact. He's making some comments that he thought that the Jerez circuit was one of those scratchers circuits, to use motorcycling parlance. Well, there's fairly happy-looking Niki Lauda on his way over to America after this Grand Prix to pick up his new means of personal transport, a new Lear, I think it's a 600 or 6,000 or 60 jet aircraft. So he's gone over to trade in the old one, pick up the new one. Well, John O'Leary still, as ever, seeking that elusive first Grand Prix victory. And I suppose there's never a Grand Prix goes by where somebody doesn't predict that O'Leary will finally break his duck and open the scoring. Another man who's been confirmed for the rest of the year, Gianni Morbidelli. The Footwork Ford team have realized that continuity and credibility is very, very important indeed, and that's why they've secured more sponsorship to maintain Morbidelli in that team.
Gerhard Berger's Ferrari, that's got a development engine in the back. It's got less power at top end, but a bit more torque, and Ferrari seems to be very happy with that engine. Well, this man is a very happy Japanese chappie, I think, Hideki Noda. Came to Europe to race in the European and British Vauxhall Lotus series, then did a couple of years of Formula 3, then 2 years of Formula 3000, and actually 3 years of Formula 3000, and now making his debut in Formula 1.
And he's driving the LaRousse Ford, one of the many teams in Formula 1 really who have to survive by taking options like Hideki Noda, bringing him into the team for this European Grand Prix. And of course, that is a drive that he is underwriting or subsidizing with sponsorship.
With the situation unchanged, we're going to take a short commercial break from Jerez here on Eurosport, and we'll be back with more action. We've got 48 minutes and 35 seconds to go. 47 minutes to go in the first qualifying session for Sunday's European Grand Prix. We don't see any cars out on the circuit, although there is a green flag, and there's no cars out because Ukyo Katayama had some oil and other fluids go out of his Yamaha engine, and the session was stopped. The officials had a look. I don't think they decided to do anything about it other than have a green flag, and everybody has to go out fairly soon. We've only seen 9 cars out on the circuit so far, with Heinz Harald Frentzen fastest.
Well, Katayama's car would be in oil business language. It was a real gusher because it poured out litre upon litre of oil for a distance of something like maybe 400 meters, 500 meters. Katayama was looking for, I think, the nearest part of the circuit so as he could get back across, back into the Tyrrell garages, and hopefully get Mark Blundell out, let him do his 12 laps, and in the time remaining, hopefully Katayama could slot into Blundell's car and get some more laps. Katayama's time, 1 minute 26.304, would put him somewhere between 15th and 20th place based on the times we have this morning. But I would predict by the time this session finishes, anything in the 26 or over are going to put you very close to being on the bubble. So it will be certainly in Katayama's and the Tyrrell team's interests to try and get him back into a car in the remaining 45 or so minutes of this session.
Oliver Panis, who, funnily enough, scrubbed in a set of new tyres this morning at the very end of the untimed session. He went out on sticker tyres and then came straight back in again, so got to find out what the reason for that was. Frentzen and Irvine, here we have the top of the leaderboard. Mansell currently 3rd, Barrichello in 4th. Incidentally, both Panis and Herbert, his new teammate, complaining of understeer during the morning session. Johnny, who's done a couple of laps at Magny-Cours on Tuesday evening, Wednesday evening and Thursday morning, just to make sure the seat was okay and the pedals were all right, and just to familiarize himself with that car and probably the team, and having his first race for Ligier here in Jerez.
And looking at Johnny Herbert's face in the paddock this morning, I'm sure he is very happy indeed with the change of fortunes for him, because not only is he in a car with a Renault V10 power pack behind him, but he will be with the Ligier team in 1995 as well. But with what engine? Another question that remains to be answered. Again, everybody believes that it will be the factory Ford engine, the Z-Tech R-based 3-litre V8, or whatever the Cosworth company produce on behalf of Ford, because at one stage they were considering a V10 engine. But once the regulation changes were changed for the 95 season, and 3.5-litre engines would be phased out at the end of the 94 season, I think Cosworth as a company would reassess the value of a V10 engine against a V8. And certainly in terms of compactness and size and efficiency, the V8 engine is a better package. And bear in mind, in 1995, we're going to see some really radical Formula One designs. Most teams are going to have cars with a fuel tank capacity of not more than 120 or 130 litres, as opposed to cars right now that can carry something like, well, 100 litres more, up around the 220, 230 litre specification. So radical design cars in 95, and therefore engine size, dimension, configuration is going to be an incremental part of the wind tunnel design of the car, as well as the engine's merits itself.
You're watching the pit lane at the moment. That's very quiet, and we see a lot of media interest in front of garage number 1, which is carrying the car of Nigel Mansell. The doors are now closed, incidentally, but there were a lot of photographers, television cameras to watch Nigel do his first run. A little less watching Damon Hill at the moment, but then Damon might like the quietness of just getting on with the job. He's here to score more points than Michael Schumacher, the man he's trailing with by 1 point in the World Championship.
Well, I think in many respects having Nigel in the team here and for the remaining 2 Grand Prix will release Damon Hill of a lot of the responsibility and media pressure. So I think it's a bonus, in fact, for Damon Hill. It will allow him to concentrate on the job he's here to do. And when you have pressure, as we see with Nigel Mansell, he's able to cope with it. He's experienced it for almost a decade. In fact, he thrives on it. It's almost like fuel to him. The more he has, the more he responds. And it is allowing Damon Hill to get on with the job of focusing on qualifying, and of course then getting himself mentally prepared for what will be on Sunday a very tough Grand Prix indeed.
70 laps around the circuit here on Sunday. The circuit that is now 4.4 kilometer or 2.7 miles long, with a couple of new corners. And one of the new corners is Curva Situ Pons, a very nice right-hander, as John said before, where Ukio Katayama blew up his engine, and that's the reason why we don't see a lot of cars. But if we look out of the windows, there's a lovely scenery around here. Someone said it looked a bit like California. I think it was you, John.
Well, it reminds me very much of some of the racetracks in Northern California. Sears Point is one case, and somebody else said, well, it's very like Arizona for Phoenix, which of course is the scene of one of the early rounds in the American IndyCar Championship on 1 Mile Oval. But here the weather's been absolutely perfect. It was gin clear this morning. Now we're getting a little bit more wind picking up and some high cloud, but very, very comfortably warm indeed. And I must say, the changes, Allard, with the circuit, I can't believe how that change with the new corner, the Situ Pons corner, has really made this circuit into something which I would like to drive a racing car on. And watching this morning, both from the back of our commentary position as the cars entered it, and then on the TV from the very low camera position, which looks to the exit of that corner, looks to me like a real racing driver's corner. The only sad aspect of the circuit, I think, is that the change that has occurred on the very, very quick double right-hand of the corner that we saw Martin Donnelly had that appalling accident some 4 years ago. There is now a chicane. It has been named after the great Ayrton Senna. I would like to have seen it maybe a better corner to be named after such a wonderful, great world champion as Ayrton Senna. I think they could improve it by making the entrance to that chicane slightly quicker. Then it would be, I think, a corner or a sequence of corners that would live up to the name that has been given to it. But in balance, the circuit looks pretty good. They've made a lot of changes here in regard to safety. The runoff area is very, very big gravel beds, and I can't really believe the amount of change that has been carried out by the organisers down in this circuit, which has really been sadly overshadowed by Barcelona, which has taken the Spanish Grand Prix up to Catalonia.
Well, talked about Damon Hill earlier. He seems to be the man that is going to be the first car out after the green flag. 34-year-old Damon, who's second in the World Championships, done 31 Grand Prix, and he's won 8 of them. But he's beaten, incidentally, by one of the Minardis, beaten out of the pit lane, that is. So it's a Minardi out first. And if we stand up, we can see who it is. This is Michele Alboreto, who's out on the circuit. And Damon Hill going out now, the man that won the Portuguese Grand Prix a couple of weeks ago, the Italian Grand Prix a month ago, and has got 75 points. Michael Schumacher has got 76. So there he goes. This is crucial, John. He's done a 24.426 this morning to Michael Schumacher's 23.850.
And he also had a quick little spin down in that new chicane, and just proves how tricky it is, and that was caused by the car that was ahead of Damon on the circuit, short-cutting the chicane, threw a lot of dust onto the track, and Damon came around and, of course, choked the tyres, caused the car to spin harmlessly as it happened. And here, back out on the circuit in the Sito Pons corner, and there you can see on the left of your screen the swathe of oil and water that Gia Katagama, and then he comes across the track right in the middle of the braking zone again, all the way back off to the right-hand side of the circuit. Now he is off the circuit, the track effectively is clear, and I think, look, if more cars would go out on the circuit within the space of about a lap and a half or 2 laps, the racing line would be just about back to normal. But no one wants to be the first person out. Michele Alboreto has decided to bite the bullet, closely followed by Damon Hill, out on his first lap of this afternoon's qualifying session.
Also out on the circuit is Mark Blundell, Katayama's teammate. Well, Damon's now at the back of the pits and the paddock, the motorhome area, going through that very tight hairpin, accelerating all through the gears, and then the straight, John, that you can see it goes up. It's an uphill braking section, and then third gear right-hander.
And Damon in big trouble, and that's not the way he wants to open his first qualifying run. And that's, to me, as if the rear tyres on this first run, he didn't really get the skin or the top surface of the tyre really worked off, and that was the consequence. So now just complete the lap and start all over again. That first corner, it's a tricky corner. It's always a combination of, should I take it in third, should I take it in second? And always, particularly on the opening lap, again, a corner that is always the scene of contact, especially between the middle and close to the back of the grid. I remember back here, all the way back, I think, to 1986, when the Jaguar team took itself out in that first corner, much to the embarrassment of the drivers involved at that particular point, and much to the fury of Tom Walkinshaw, who I think was absolutely apoplectic in his anger. So the first corner on Sunday afternoon, a part of the circuit where extreme caution is required.
Damon Hill completing his first flying lap at the Jerez circuit. A 1:25.282 is good enough for fourth position at the moment, but he should be able to go quicker than that.
Well, here's Damon Ryan just directly behind our commentary position, coming up into Sito Pons corner. Magic corner. This, Allard, reminds me of the Zeltweg circuit in Austria. Long corners, rising and dropping. Corners that you can really get your teeth into. Now down into one of the slower parts of the circuit, all the way down, certainly into second gear. Hard acceleration, third. Fourth gear flat through the first left. Fifth gear on the limiter, lifting off. braking. Now, I don't know whether Damon Hill will do what Michael Schumacher will do in that particular corner, but for sure Schumacher will be left foot braking through that corner, but keeping as much power on as possible so as he maintains the exhaust downforce, the contribution in the downforce that the exhaust gases provide.
Damon Hill being 4/10 slower than Heinz Harald Frentzen at the second intermediate. Now, is that oil still a big factor? Or maybe Frentzen's time was very good indeed. At 1:24.184, it would have put him second fastest this morning. 24.7. Hill that's half a second away from Frentzen. So Frentzen still fastest.
I think for Damon, after his first lap mishap in this first corner on this qualifying lap, he's decided to drive himself in. In fact, he's driving himself back into the pits, because this is a returning lap into the pits for Damon Hill. And he may not be very happy with the balance of the car out as well. Remember the difference in track conditions between this morning and now, and we're more or less in normal terms almost 3/4 way through the session. But of course we're not even anywhere near halfway in terms of overall running. So Damon Hill may wish to go back in, have a little word with the engineers, want to make some chassis or an aerodynamic change to his car. He will not want to have a car that is nervous. Here in Jerez, you've got to be able to lean on the car. You've got to trust the car, because that is the only way you'll get speed out of the car on a circuit with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 corners.
Hill back into the pits. So the situation is Frentzen, Hill, Irvine, Mansell, Barrichello and Panis. That's your top 6 for you. He's not going into the pits. Thank you very much, Damon. Done a slow lap and now goes for it again.
Well, he's had a little thought on that lap and decided that things felt sufficiently confident and good enough. Now again up into this Curva Expo 92. That's the name given to it. Perfect entry and perfect exit. Then down into Michelin. Tight double apex right hand corner, then a flick to the left, then this wonderful flat out 4th, 5th gear corner directly behind our commentary position, up to 6th gear, then back down into 4th into Cito Pons, climbing up, then the track falls away and drops down, and all the way down into a corner made famous by a sherry that is produced here in Jerez, Dry Sack.
Well, Damon's quicker now than Frentzen, 1:71. A 1/10 of a second quicker than the German.
And into these long corners, very wide on the apex, into another famous corner named after a famous Spanish motorcyclist, Angel Nieto. The first part really is in preparation for the second part. Then up to the Ayrton Senna chicane, the right, the left. And then finally a little bit of oversteer on the exit from the left, then powering out into the second part of that, what was flat out in 6th gear, double right-hand corner, then down all the way through the gearbox, 2nd gear, then the thrust up onto pit straight, coming across start-finish line now.
Well, he's closer, but he still hasn't done it yet. Damon Hill, 6 laps gone, a 1:24.287, currently in 2nd position. Michael Schumacher has not been out yet, but he's still got half an hour exactly to do so. So Damon Hill, 2nd behind Heinz Harald Frentzen. 3rd, Eddie Irvine. 4th, Nigel Mansell. Mansell, who finished 2nd here in 1990, the last time we raced in Jerez with Formula 1 cars. Also, incidentally, Zanardi's teammate Eric Bernard was here then, Michele Alboreto, Gerhard Berger, David Brabham and Bertrand Gachot, other drivers that were here back in 1990. Well, some in less competitive cars than others.
Yes, indeed. Well, Alessandro Zanardi is the team leader for the Lotus team here in Jerez, and Andrea de Cesaris in his Sauber Mercedes-Benz coming out for his first run. And de Cesaris this morning, he finished up 11th quickest. His time this morning, 1:25.435. And currently a time like that would put him 6th quickest, because Olivier Panis, who presently holds that place, has only achieved a 1 minute 26.124. But of course that session, or this current session, stopped due to the oil. There you see the remains of Katayama's oil, and it's taken some 25 minutes before people ventured back out. We had a red flag before we saw the circuit becoming busy once again.
Damon Hill going into the pits while the Lotus behind it, John. I'm not sure whether that's all, that rocker cover, that shock absorber cover is fitted very well. I might be wrong.
If it isn't fitted well, Allard,
it'll fly off
for
soon.
Sure, it'll be flying like a kite high above Jerez. Michael Schumacher studying.
He doesn't seem to be worried.
The Tag Heuer monitor, and he looks completely calm and composed, and certainly his performance this morning was pretty demonstrative. He ended up just under half a second, not Damon Hill, second quickest, but Mika Häkkinen in the Marlboro McLaren Peugeot, and a very convincing performance from Häkkinen in the closing moments of that 1.5 hour session. And we've yet to see Häkkinen out this afternoon. Teammate Martin Brundle was in the pit lane a second or two ago, so the first of the two McLaren Peugeots on the circuit.
Well, let's not forget Jean Alesi was of course here in 1990 as well, then driving for Tyrrell. Or was he at Ferrari then? Anyway, Jean Alesi was here, and Alesi having the old spec Ferrari engine, the engine that has quite a lot of power, but only at rev ranges where you don't get very often.
Well, something like 16,200 RPM is what the Ferrari engine can run to, but it means you've got a pretty narrow power band, and the engine that is in Gerhard Berger's car, they've sacrificed a little of the top end of the engine, and again, Alesi doing what we saw Damon Hill do, getting into the corner too hard, braking uphill. The back of the car, as a consequence, is going to be slightly higher than if you're braking on a level part of circuit. And that then means all the downforce charges to the front of the car. He gets all pivoty and very nervous.
Jean Alesi, spectacular as ever in the Ferrari. It's his 4th year with Ferrari, John, and next year will be his 5th year with the Italian team. I mean, that's a very long time.
Well, I think it says a lot about the stubbornness of Jean Alesi. His philosophy is, the longer I stay at Ferrari, the more chance there is of me winning for Ferrari. Other drivers would have been maybe taken a more pragmatic view of the situation, and I'm quite sure if Alesi had it in mind to leave his beloved Ferrari team, and look at the trouble he's in, really under-braking the car, snaking and losing lots and lots of times. But let's say other drivers may not have been as loyal to a team as Alesi has been. Back in '89, when Alesi debuted for the Tyrrell team, and certainly in 1990 when he was absolutely dynamite in Phoenix and in Monte Carlo, it was not if he'd win a Grand Prix, but when is he going to win it? Well, we're 5 years on and he still is waiting for his elusive maiden victory.
Alesi's backed off. His first flying lap was a 1:26.012. That's good enough for 6th position. He's behind Barrichello in 5th, Mansell in 4th, Irvine in 3rd, 2nd Hill, and 1st Frentzen.
Well, looks spectacular. It probably feels very nervous indeed. This is a shot from the onboard camera, and look at the amount of lock Alesi has.
Maybe that was the downshift going a little bit too quick, John, and the rear wheels just locking up momentarily.
Well, whatever it was, certainly it cost Alesi time. He will not be satisfied with his time, 1:26.012. In the meantime, Martin Brundle up in 7th place, directly behind Jean Alesi, and looking for more.
24 minutes to go in this first qualifying session. Frentzen leads Hill, Irvine, Mansell and Barrichello. We'll be back after the break with 20 minutes. 22 minutes to go in the final first qualifying session for Sunday's European Grand Prix at Jerez. Heinz Harald Frentzen is still fastest. Damon Hill second In third position, it's Eddie Irvine, and in fourth position, Nigel Mansell. Then it's Rubens Barrichello fifth, ahead of Jean Alesi, who's 1.8 seconds behind fastest man Heinz Harald Frentzen. Brundle, Panis, Katayama, De Cesaris, Fittipaldi and Johnny Herbert complete the top 12, while Nigel Mansell goes out on the circuit. Martini, Blundell, Morbidelli are behind those. So Mansell, the first driver to do another run, while Mika Häkkinen, let's just see what he does on his first flying lap.
For Mika Häkkinen, let's say, was the surprise of this morning's. Look at that, all arms and elbows, and typical Mika Häkkinen, not satisfied with the width of the track. He's trying to make it wider, loses time in the process, but he's always exciting to watch. Even when he's testing, if there's an inch of track to spare, look again, right over the curbs, he makes it 1.5 inches. Right on the outer edge of every little curb, bit of circuit.
And he must be traveling well over 220 kilometers an hour, John, at that point. Well, 1500ths of a second slower than Heinz Harald Frentzen at that particular point. So Mika Häkkinen is looking good on his first flying lap.
And it's a circuit that this McLaren Peugeot will like, because here McLaren can run lots and lots of downforce, and that's the configuration. Look at Mika off the track. I think this is a rallycross driver, not a Grand Prix driver. Well, he's in fact lost more time. He's now, you can see, just over a second slower than Heinz Harald Frentzen. And I'm not surprised, because that exuberance that Häkkinen has been providing us, the entertainment, has taken its toll. He's lost time. 1 minute 25.818, and that sees Mika Häkkinen all the way down in 6th place. Häkkinen, oh!
No, it's someone else. It looks like a Benetton off the circuit. A Benetton, both Benettons are out on the circuit, but is this Jos Verstappen, or is it? It's Verstappen off the circuit, and that was a big impact.
It certainly was. It looked as if really there was little loss of speed. Car spun, went backwards at high speed. Here, let's look and see. Well, difficult to tell. I'd like to look at that one again, because he came up to the corner, he turned in, and then he just lost grip. The car spun off very quickly indeed. Heavy impact into that tyre wall, and at that part of the circuit again, an area where the tyre barriers have been moved further back. But the gravel bed and the speed the car was travelling at, really no loss of speed at all until solid impact was made in that tyre wall. Verstappen out of the car unhurt, but of course he will be anxious to get back to the pits and hope that his teammate Michael Schumacher will be able to complete his 12 laps in time to possibly give him a run. But I don't know what the Benetton Ford team would do, because that puts a lot of onus on Verstappen if he is to be given Schumacher's car.
There we see yellow flags. Verstappen was on his second flying lap, incidentally. And, well, has the circuit lost a bit of speed, John? Could that be it? Because Michael Schumacher can't get close to Frentzen on that lap, but then he might have backed off because of his teammate and the yellow flags. Verstappen actually being right behind Michael Schumacher when he went off. 2300ths of a second, he moves into second place on his very first flying lap. So, I beg your pardon, Michael, a very good performance there.
Well, I would say that Michael would have been a little bit apprehensive or cautious just on that opening lap. So there we are, coming out of Michelin now into this long flat out left-hand corner, or corner presently without name, now into the Cito Ponds, this wonderful long right-hand corner, uphill, then drops down, increased length from this straight at the back of the circuit, then hard on the brakes into the sherry drinkers' favourite corner, dry sack. And Schumacher, I think, just taking it easy, and probably as he comes up to the completion of this lap, as we saw Damon Hill do. It may be the function or factor of tyres. That was the first hard lap Schumacher had on this first set of tyres. He may feel that there's benefits to be gained from easing off, giving the tyre a chance to recover, and then getting back on it, or what will in effect be this beginning of a fifth lap.
Nigel Mansell back in the pits. He has improved a little bit on that second run. Now we're 1:24.986. Mansell in 5th position. Schumacher accelerating out of the corner here, leading on to the straight. The corner is called Ducados. Then towards Expo 92. Uphill, 3rd gear, using the curves, not too much, as we saw Mika Häkkinen do earlier. And let's just have a look. Keep an eye on the first intermediate time. Bottom left is Schumacher. On the right, Frentzen currently fastest. 1:24.1. Nice little red dot on our screen. Can't see what the time is. Whoa.
Well, let's have a look. 35.2 is the first intermediate time. Schumacher will want to run 35.150, so 1/10 of a second quicker. There you see the track where all the oil that was put out by Katayama much earlier in the session. So much oil so that the circuit, in fact, was red flagged. And Schumacher working hard as he comes down to Angel Nito, the first of these two right-hand corners. And again, the back end of the car getting away from Schumacher. Not using so much curb as we saw Mika Häkkinen a minute ago, and their time has just evaporated.
And we saw that earlier on, John, with Damon Hill, who was nearly 2/10 quicker than Heinz Harald Frentzen and lost all of that advantage in the middle part of the circuit. So either the oil affecting it very good, but well, that car is sliding a lot, that Benetton, coming onto the main straight, and still it's Heinz Harald Frentzen.
I think, Ella, there's a combination of the oil that is on the circuit. Undoubtedly it has made a difference to the speed into, around and off the Sito Pons corner, and also then down at the Hairpin Bend dry sack. Those two corners, you're talking about 1/10 of seconds, but it's momentum as well. And of course, once the driver is conscious that the circuit there isn't as good as it was in the morning, that takes a couple of thousandths of a second away from a driver. But certainly one thing is clear: Heinz Harald Frentzen and Eddie Irvine, who were the two that were out at the very beginning of the session, have probably seen the best of the circuit, as well as the oil in the circuit, the track temperature continuing to rise, and therefore altering what drivers would expect from the handling balance of their car.
Christian Fittipaldi currently in 15th position in the arrows for the footwork team. The Ford HB engine, a Series 8 engine, HB engine in the back of that car.
They've used 7 Series and 8 Series throughout the year, and in fact at Hockenheim, where they had an 8 Series engine, they discovered that the 7 Series was actually the quicker combination. 8 Series, of course, has got a little bit more top-end power, offset by having a little bit less at the bottom end. On a circuit like Jerez, I personally would prefer the 7 Series. It's a more suitable engine for the kind or the nature of the Jerez circuit. Well, I think it depends what you've got left in the bin as to what choices you have.
So Schumacher back, second place, 24.207, behind former Mercedes junior teammate Heinz Harald Frentzen, the man that's rumored to go to McLaren with the engine when and if the engine goes there. I wonder whether Frentzen would like to go to McLaren, John, and with the possibility of being kicked out after a year and make place for Michael Schumacher.
Well, I think any opportunity to drive in a team like the Marlboro McLaren team is one that any driver would relish, even if it is just for a year. I was very fortunate in having 5 years with the team, so I do speak from experience, and I do know the qualities and the depth of qualities that the Marlboro McLaren team can give a driver.
Again with Christian Fittipaldi, and there's Pierluigi Martini. Martini in the Minardi, another of the Ford HB users, in 16th position.
Well, we're going to get a pretty good, I think, comparison shortly. Eddie Irvine, who was, we mentioned, one of the first on the track and got the benefit before Katayama's blow-up. He's been in the pits for 50-odd minutes. He's back out on the circuit, and we will get now a pretty direct comparison between the time Irvine established his 1 minute 24.967 and what he's going to attain some 50 minutes later. And that may well give us the key as to what circuit or track conditions have deteriorated to. There is, in fact, a waved yellow flag. Somebody's gone off away at the far end of the circuit in the second part of Angel Nito. And I can only see that from the commentary position, some half a kilometre or so away. We can't see the car. So back in the garages, and a very relaxed indeed Heinz Harald Frentzen, delighted with his afternoon's work to date.
Well, he's got 10 minutes left in this session, and you wonder, would Heinz Harald go out and try and beat that time, or is he happy enough to sit back? Of course, the big advantage Johnny's got at the moment is that he's used one set of tyres only.
Rubens Barrichello and his Sassel Jordan Hart. Barrichello, first run ended up 7th quickest, 1 minute 25.326. This is his third lap on the second set of tyres. You see the split times, 35.262, and only 3/10 slower than Heinz Harald Frentzen at that first intermediate. So if Barrichello can maintain his momentum, he's gotten through the worst of the slippery parts of the track. He's now making his way down into the Angel Nito duo of corners. Here was where the waved yellow flag was. Now up to Ayrton Senna, the chicane. Half a second, so he's lost a further 2/10. But this should see an improvement from the young Brazilian,
who is 1.1 second away from Frentzen at the moment. Braking for the last corner and accelerating out again. Well, improvement from Eddie Irvine and Rubens Barrichello. Irvine is now back in 5th because Barrichello's improved to a 1:24.700. 4th and 5th, both Jordans.
Well, I must say the circuit, if it was slow a few moments ago, appears to have found its time again, and it's just precisely the right time for Damon Hill to get back on the circuit to dish out his challenge to Heinz Harald Frentzen. Now that's an unusual man to see topping the times in a qualifying session, but he did it on merit. He did it early in this 1-hour session. Michael Schumacher, Damon Hill's arch rival in the championship, is only like hundreds of seconds quicker than Damon Hill.
So Damon on his first flying lap again, getting a bit sideways in that Expo 92, the first corner. I don't think he's got any traffic ahead of him. I couldn't hear any, can hear Damon go past the commentary booth now. So no traffic ahead of Damon Hill. This should and could be provisional pole for Damon. First intermediate, is he quicker than Frentzen? 1800s. That's as far ahead as he's gone. Now, if he can accelerate out of that corner, all right. Go through the left-hander's right and get it all together. Well, just finish a lap, Damon.
And I think the most difficult part of the track for Damon will not be these lovely long curves where you can really get the car to work. You feel it working. Gives you an enormous feeling of exhilaration. But it's in here. This is the Ayrton Senna curve. This is where time can be so easily lost. Just trying to push too hard, too early. The car gets away from you. Clean through it now. He's got to make a better than 1:24.184 and provisional pole can be his.
Damon Hill accelerating to start finish. And he's done it. Damon Hill's taken provisional pole by 0.04 of a second. So the Williams Renault on provisional pole with 6.5 minutes to go. And is Frentzen going to? John, I remember back in 1988 when Heinz Harald Frentzen was racing in Opel Lotus. He was doing the German Championship. He'd won that, and as a prize, he could do the last 2 rounds of the European Championship. Now, the first one of those 2 was in Estoril, the second one here in Jerez. And Heinz Harald Frentzen was just mighty, racing against people like Mika Häkkinen. He was just seconds quicker than anybody else, so he obviously likes his place.
And of course, all that experience in the Opel Lotus back in the 80s will be a valuable assistance to him here this weekend because, well, I suppose the power outputs are pretty similar. Well, Damon Hill looks like he's called a halt to this particular lap. And a few moments ago when we looked into the Williams pits, I expected to see some jubilation on the face of the Williams team personnel, but they all stood there somewhat nonplussed, as if, well, it's quite normal to have Damon on provisional pole, isn't it?
He's 0.04 of a second quicker than Frentzen, 0.07 quicker than Michael Schumacher, and then there's 0.5 second to Rubens Barrichello. But Damon Hill starting lap number 11. He's got 2 laps to go to improve on that 1:24.137. Schumacher 3rd, Barrichello is in 4th position, 5th Eddie Irvine, 6th Nigel Mansell, and then 7th is Jean Alesi, 8th Gerhard Berger, 9th Panis, 10th the Cesaris. Mika Häkkinen back in 11th position, just ahead of Martin Brundle. Fittipaldi, Herbert is 14th, and Johnny Herbert is about 8 slower than Oliver Panis in his first proper qualifying run in the car.
Well, there is red 2. Nigel Mansell on his final lap. And this is the lap he will hope will see further improvement because his day is now finished and traffic is not going to be of any asset to him whatsoever. But no problem in getting past. That was Gerhard Berger. And Michael Schumacher just ahead on the road as he back on the track in the closing moments of this session, trying to eclipse Damon Hill's provisional pole time.
Damon, who's got 2 more laps to go in this qualifying run. Nigel Mansell using the curves there, John, on the inside of the corner a lot. Now, I'm not sure.
Well, Mansell, of course, is very familiar with the bulk of this Jerez circuit. He's raced here many, many times through the 80s and into, well, up until 1990. So he knows the circuit. It's not a strange circuit to him. The thing that is strange, of course, is FW16, the revised Williams, in accordance with all the changes that have been carried out, which were introduced in mid-season, with the wooden plank particularly being fitted under the car, reduction in downforce, so a car that is different in character to that he drove in the French Grand Prix in June.
Heinz Harald Frentzen is out onto the track again after 59 minutes and 8 seconds, so he spent a very long time in the pits lead. He hasn't got to worry about running out of laps. The only thing he's got to worry about is running out of time, and the time he's got left is 2 minutes and 45 seconds to be exact.
What we've got to keep an eye on is Michael Schumacher, who we saw on the track. He pulled over to let Mansell through, and he's got lots and lots of laps left. What he hasn't got left is much time. But in a shootout like here this afternoon, and there's somebody off, and look at the dust, dirt on the track. And I don't know who was responsible for doing that. No car at the scene. And there is Michael Schumacher coming up to complete another lap, and he should be able to get at least one more clear lap in before the checkered flag comes out to end this session.
Michael Schumacher accelerating out of the corner. His right foot planted fully through the bulkhead, but half a second short on that lap.
And that half a second might as well be half a minute. And there you can see the degree of frustration, I think, from Michael Schumacher, because I think that was a lap that he gave everything that he had.
Well, he's got time, John, to come back round and do another lap. Well, Damon Hill is definitely out of laps, and there we see what happened.
Oh, dear me, now that is criminal. And I would say that is not at least a suspension. That was dangerous driving, and that will be an immediate appearance in front of the stewards of the meeting. Whatever took place, certainly Damon Hill was forced off the racetrack. And if I was the Williams team and if I was Damon Hill, I would be remonstrating instantly.
Michael Schumacher on his last lap. We have 46 seconds to go, and there's plenty of action on the circuit. Damon Hill's out of laps and trying to get back into the pits at the moment. There we see him on the right. Michael Schumacher has got this lap and the next to try and improve to anything quicker than a 1:24, 1:37, 25 seconds to go, so Michael can do another lap. This was a slow lap. It's all or nothing for Michael Schumacher on this lap here in Jerez.
And what he needs, Allard, is a clear lap. No traffic, no distractions. And Schumacher looks very, very committed on this, the last lap, not just for him, but of this first qualifying session here in the 16th round, 14th round of 16 in the 94 World Championship. And I'm sure he will want to go to bed tonight confident of starting Saturday's qualification, knowing that he is the man on the pole and not his arch rival Damon Hill.
Michael lost some time coming out of the hairpin, car sliding around a little bit too much. Now these two right-handers that lead up to the second intermediate. And let's see what the gap is. So 1:02.500 was here for Damon Hill. Michael Schumacher, 72 thousandths of a second slower than Damon. Another problem is there's a car ahead of him. He's got to back up, and I think Michael's lost it. I'm not sure, but I don't think this will be good enough for provisional pole position. Will it be good enough for second? Will he beat Heinz Harald Frenzen's time?
Well, I tell you what, it was close. It was close. Now, no doubt, the Lotus in the way took those thousands of seconds away.
So it's Damon Hill on the provisional pole. Then it is Heinz Harald Frentzen in second place and fastest of the German drivers. Michael Schumacher is third, the World Championship leader, although he probably would have been on the front row of the grid, but then he isn't, so you can't change it now. He can change it tomorrow between 1 and 2. Barrichello, Irvine, Mansell, Berger, Alesi, Häkkinen and Panis complete the top 10.
Mika Häkkinen finally got his act together, but he's still way, almost a second slower than he was in this morning's session. But Damon Hill, I think, has provided the best possible response to all the rhetoric that was being spoken earlier in the week in Estoril by Michael Schumacher, because it is Damon Hill who has secured provisional pole. It doesn't matter if and or maybes. Damon Hill is the man who was quickest here on Friday afternoon for Sunday's Grand Prix.
Frentzen second, and look at the difference. Frentzen, Schumacher, 70 thousandths of a second between Hill and Schumacher. Then Barrichello, Irvine, two Jordans again in the top 5, thumbs up. Nigel Mansell, Gerhard Berger, Jean Alesi, Mika Häkkinen, Panis 10th, good performance by the young Frenchman. Andrea de Cesaris 11th, then it's Martini and Brundle. Blundell 14th, Gianni Morbidelli, Christian Fittipaldi, Johnny Herbert and his first run in the Ligier, Ukio Katayama after that early blow-up, and the last qualifiers are Noda Sciattarella and Bertrand Gachot. Not qualified for the moment are Jos Verstappen and Paul Belmondo, but I think, John, a very good performance by Mr. Sciattarella, Mimo, because I don't think very many people thought he was going to qualify, to be honest.
I think most people thought Sciattarella sounds like a new form of pasta, or possibly a new Italian ice cream. Also, Hideki Noda has done well. So, interesting session. Damon Hill, the man who is on provisional pole. Surprisingly, Heinz Harald Frentzen is second quickest, and only in third place, the man who most people predicted would be quickest here this afternoon, Michael Schumacher.
1 hour to go, Saturday, between 1 and 2 o'clock. Follow it live here on Eurosport, because it's the final qualifying session for the European Grand Prix on Sunday. Damon Hill's got provisional pole. Michael Schumacher wants it, but, well, Nigel Mansell, could he be in for a surprise? Could Frentzen stay on the front row of the grid? And could the Ferraris get up to speed and try and challenge for that provisional or for pole position? You can find out tomorrow here on Eurosport. From John Watson and Allard Cow, it's bye from Jerez and see you tomorrow. Hill, Frentzen, Schumacher, provisional top 3.
The Formula One World Championship is brought to you on Eurosport by Ford, Formula One's most successful team. Hitachi, Elf Fuel, World Champion.